When I picked up my daughter from her grandmother's house that morning, I thought the hardest part of my week was behind me. I had only been gone for one night, just a single overnight work trip. But the way she stepped out onto the porch told me something wasn't right. Leia didn't run to me the way she always did. She didn't throw herself into my arms with that excited smile that usually lit up her whole face. Instead, she walked slowly, her teddy bear clutched tight against her chest, her eyes lowered. I crouched down, opening my arms wide. She came in for the hug, but the way she held on to me was different, tighter, heavier almost, as if she didn't want to let go. We got into the car, and as I buckled her in, I asked if she had fun. She didn't answer. She just stared out the window, her small shoulders rigid. And then she leaned toward me, her little voice barely a whisper. "Mommy," she said, "Grandma told me I should never tell you what I saw." My chest tightened instantly, my heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "what did you see?" She turned to me, then her wide brown eyes filled with something far too big for a 5-year-old to carry. "There was a girl in the basement," she said. That was the moment my world shifted. "My name is Hannah. I'm 32 years old, and I live just outside Columbus, Ohio. I'm a third-grade teacher, and more importantly, I'm a single mom to the most beautiful, bright little girl. I lost my husband Ethan 3 years ago in a car accident, and since then, Leia has been my whole world. Our life hasn't been easy. It's been full of scraped budgets, late nights, and aching silences, but it's ours. We brush our teeth together to silly songs, eat macaroni dinners side by side, and every night she makes me lie down next to her until she falls asleep. Ethan's mother, Eleanor, is Leia's only connection to his side of the family. And though I've tried to keep that bond alive, there's always been a distance between us. Eleanor never approved of me. She never said it outright, but I could feel it in the way she looked at me at Ethan's funeral, as if I wasn't good enough for her son, as if everything about me was wrong. Still, I didn't want my feelings to come between Leia and her grandmother. That's why when the school organized a weekend retreat and my usual babysitting options weren't available, I agreed to let Leia stay with Eleanor overnight. Just one night. I told myself it would be fine. But that morning when Leia whispered those words to me, when she described seeing another child locked away in the basement crying and afraid something inside me cracked open. Children can be imaginative, yes, but this wasn't fantasy. It was too specific, too raw, too frightening to dismiss. I tried to stay calm for her sake, but inside I was shaking. As soon as I got her home, I called my best friend Olivia, a child psychologist. I told her everything, my voice breaking. She didn't hesitate. "Hannah," she said, "kids don't make up stories like that. Not with that kind of detail. If she saw someone crying in pain, you have to take it seriously." So I did. I called the police. My voice shook as I told the dispatcher exactly what my daughter had said, that she saw a girl in Eleanor's basement crying hurt, told to stay quiet. The dispatcher listened carefully, then said she was sending officers immediately. I hung up, staring at my phone in disbelief. My daughter's words echoed in my ears. "Grandma said I should never tell you what I saw." Fear coursed through me, but it was quickly replaced by something else: determination. I couldn't ignore this. I couldn't hope it wasn't true. If there was even a chance another child was trapped in that house, I had to act. I texted Olivia asking if she could come stay with Leia while I went back to Eleanor's. She didn't ask questions, she just replied, "Coming." By the time I pulled back into Eleanor's driveway, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The curtains were drawn tight. The house looked still, too still, as though it were holding a secret. Eleanor opened the door, her face hard, her eyes sharp. "What are you doing back?" she asked. I forced a smile. "I think Leia left one of her teddy bear outfits here. I just need to check her room." Her eyes narrowed. "There's nothing left here." But I stepped inside anyway. The air was heavy, thick, almost suffocating. I rummaged through Leia's bag, making noise to cover the sound of my steps, as I moved toward the back hallway, the one that led to the basement. That's when Eleanor's voice snapped like a whip. "Don't open that door, Hannah." Her voice was sharp, commanding, like she had been waiting for this exact moment. For years, Eleanor had spoken to me with disdain, but this time it wasn't just judgment, it was fear. I froze mid-step, my hand hovering near the door handle. Her eyes locked on mine, cold and furious. "Don't open that door, Hannah." Something inside me clenched. I had always let her words stop me before. When she criticized my parenting, when she made backhanded comments about my home, my finances, the way I dressed Leia, I bit my tongue. I swallowed my pride for the sake of keeping peace. But not now. Not when my daughter had come home trembling, whispering about a girl locked in this house. Why, I asked softly, though my heart was pounding so loud I barely recognized my own voice. Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. Because I said so. This is my house. You have no right. Her words sent me spiraling back to the years with Ethan, when she tried to control everything, our wedding plans, our first apartment, even how we raised Leia. Ethan used to tell me, "Ignore her, Hannah. She just wants to feel important." But there was nothing petty about the way she stood there now blocking the basement like a guard dog. I took a shaky breath. Leia saw something, I whispered. She told me about a girl, crying, in the basement. For the briefest second, something flickered across her face, panic. Then she recovered her expression, hardening into something even crueler. Children make things up. She's a lonely child, she imagines. I shook my head. No, not like that, not with those words. Her jaw tightened. You're a foolish girl, Hannah. You always were. That's why Ethan... She stopped, but the venom in her tone was enough. I knew what she meant. That's why Ethan died angry with me. That's why our marriage hadn't been perfect. That's why she blamed me for every misfortune. My chest burned with the weight of all her accusations, past and present. But this wasn't about me. I'm calling the police, I said, my voice breaking but steady. Her face drained of color. You wouldn't. I already did. For the first time in all the years I had known Eleanor, she looked afraid. Truly afraid. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. I heard it then, a faint sound behind the door. So soft I thought I imagined it. A muffled whimper. I stepped forward. Eleanor moved to block me, but I pushed past her, my hand on the doorknob. She clawed at my arm, hissing, "You don't know what you're doing." But I twisted the knob anyway. The door creaked open, releasing a rush of stale, damp air. The smell hit me, mildew dust, something sour that made my stomach churn. And then I heard it clearly, a sob. My body went rigid. I flicked on the light switch and the dim bulbs buzzed to life, casting a weak yellow glow down the stairs. My legs trembled as I descended, Eleanor's frantic voice shrieking behind me. "Stop, you'll ruin everything." At the bottom of the stairs I saw her, a girl maybe 10 or 11 years old, huddled in the corner on a thin mattress. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, her hair matted. She clutched her knees to her chest, flinching when the light hit her eyes. My heart nearly stopped. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Sweetheart." She recoiled at my voice, terrified. I raised my hands gently, trying to show her I meant no harm. Behind me, Eleanor's footsteps pounded down the stairs. "She's not yours," she screamed. "She's not your concern." I turned on her, my voice shaking with fury I didn't know I still possessed. "Not my concern. She's a child." "What have you done, Eleanor?" Before she could answer, red and blue lights flashed through the small basement window. The sound of car doors slamming and heavy boots on the porch followed. Eleanor's face went pale as the pounding knock echoed through the house. "Police, open up." Eleanor spun toward the stairs, wild-eyed, but I blocked her path. For the first time in my life, I didn't shrink from her. I didn't flinch under her scorn. I stood my ground, trembling, but unyielding as the officers' voices thundered again above us. "Columbus Police Department, open the door now." The pounding on the front door rattled through the house, each knock reverberating in my chest. Eleanor's breathing grew ragged, her face twisted in panic. She darted her gaze from me to the girl in the corner like a wolf caught between fight and flight. "Don't let them in!" she hissed, her voice hoarse and desperate. "You don't understand. If they find her, everything is ruined." "Ruined for who?" I snapped. "You." Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came. For the first time, I saw her mask slip entirely. She wasn't the cold, superior woman who had judged me all these years. She was something far darker, someone who had secrets buried in the shadows of her home. "Please," the girl whispered. Her voice was raw, like it hadn't been used in days. That was all it took. I stormed up the stairs, two at a time, and flung the front door wide. Two officers stood there, hands poised near their holsters, their expressions sharp. "Ma'am, we received a report. She's in the basement." I cut them off, my voice shaking. "There's a child, please, hurry." They brushed past me, boots pounding against the floor. Eleanor shrieked behind me, a guttural sound that barely sounded human. "No, you can't take her. She belongs here." One officer pushed her back firmly while the other descended into the basement. His voice rose a moment later, echoing through the stairwell. "We've got a minor female approximately 11 years old. Malnourished. Get medical on standby." The words made my knees weaken. I clutched the doorframe for balance, my eyes stinging with tears. Eleanor thrashed against the officer, holding her, screaming incoherently curses tangled with pleas. "Eleanor Bennett," the officer barked, "you are under arrest for unlawful imprisonment. Put your hands behind your back." The sound of metal cuffs clicking shut was louder than her wails. As they hauled her toward the door, she turned her head, her eyes blazing with a venom I'd never seen before. "This is your fault, Hannah. You don't know what you've done." Her words sliced through me, but I didn't look away. For years, she had used those kinds of words to keep me small, to make me doubt myself. Not anymore. The paramedics arrived within minutes, rushing down into the basement with blankets and medical kits. They carried the girl up carefully, her thin frame wrapped in a thermal sheet. She blinked at the sudden light, her face, pale eyes darting nervously around the room. My heart cracked at the sight. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, though I knew she couldn't trust me yet. She had lived in a darkness I couldn't begin to imagine. The officers led Eleanor out in handcuffs, her hair disheveled, her screams echoing down the street until the squad car door slammed shut. The neighborhood had gathered by then, faces peeking out of curtains and porches. Whispers rose like smoke in the night air. I stood frozen in the doorway, the chill seeping into my bones. All I could think of was Leia's voice in the car that morning, whispering, "Grandma told me I should never tell you what I saw." My little girl had carried the weight of this secret, terrified and brave enough to speak up anyway. As the paramedics carried the rescued child past me, she glanced up briefly, her eyes meeting mine. In that fleeting second, I saw layers of fear, pain, and something else, something fragile but alive. Hope. I felt my tears spill over. An officer approached, his expression firm but gentle. "Ma'am, we'll need a statement. Your daughter too, eventually. But for now, thank you. If you hadn't called, I don't know what would have happened to that child." I nodded numbly, words lodged in my throat. "Thank me," I was trembling, shaken, unsure if I'd done enough. The ambulance doors closed with a heavy thud, sirens wailing as it pulled away. The night air was filled with sound, yet inside me there was only silence, a silence heavy with questions. Who was that girl? How long had she been down there? And what twisted secrets had Eleanor been hiding all this time? The answers I knew would unravel in the days to come. But for now, one truth pressed harder than all the rest. I had trusted Eleanor with my daughter. The house felt eerily empty after they dragged Eleanor away. The silence clung to the walls like a shadow, and I found myself standing in the middle of her living room, shivering, though the air wasn't cold. I should have left immediately, but my legs wouldn't move. Every corner of that house suddenly felt sinister, as if the curtains, the furniture, the very floorboards held secrets. The officer who had stayed behind cleared his throat gently. "Ma'am, you should go home to your daughter now. We'll be in touch soon for a full statement." I nodded, but my voice caught in my throat. Home. Yes, I needed to be with Leia. I walked out into the night, the flashing lights painting the street red and blue. Neighbors gathered in small knots, whispering behind their hands, their eyes darting toward me. I kept my gaze fixed on my car, forcing one foot in front of the other. When I finally walked into my own house, Leia ran to me, wrapping her arms around my waist so tightly I thought I might collapse from the sheer force of love and relief. I knelt, cupping her face. "It's okay, baby. You're safe now." Her lip trembled. "Is Grandma mad at me?" The question pierced me. How could I explain to a child that her grandmother's love was twisted, broken in ways that love should never be? "No, sweetheart," I said softly, brushing away her tears. "You did the right thing. You were so brave. I'm proud of you." That night, I barely slept, my mind replaying the basement over and over. The girl's hollow eyes, Eleanor's shrieks, the sound of the cuffs snapping shut. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Leia sitting in that same corner, terrified and small. The thought turned my stomach until I had to sit on the edge of the bed just to breathe. By morning, the news had already broken. Eleanor Bennett, my daughter's grandmother, my late husband's mother, was on every local channel. Woman arrested for unlawful imprisonment. Young girl rescued. Her mugshot glared back at me from the TV screen, her eyes wild hair disheveled. Reporters speculated, neighbors gave interviews, and strangers online debated who the child was and why she had been there. The phone rang off the hook. Olivia called, my principal called, even Ethan's old friends reached out stunned. Everyone wanted to know how much I knew what had happened, what Eleanor's motives were, but I had no answers. Later that afternoon, a detective came to my door. His expression was serious, but not unkind. We've identified the girl, he told me. Her name is Marissa. She was reported missing 2 months ago in a neighboring county. I felt the blood drain from my face. 2 months, he nodded grimly. We're still piecing together how Eleanor came into contact with her. There are signs of coercion, neglect, possibly worse. It will take time to get the full picture, but Marissa's parents have been notified. They're on their way to the hospital. I pressed a hand to my mouth, the horror of it crashing down like a wave. Eleanor had kept a missing child hidden in her basement while I entrusted her with my own daughter. If Laya hadn't spoken up, if she had been too afraid to tell me what might have happened. After the detective left, I sat on the couch with Laya curled against me, her small head on my shoulder. She asked me to play her favorite lullaby on my phone, and as the soft music filled the room, I thought about how innocence could be so easily shattered. The following days blurred into interview statements, endless questions from investigators. Each time I repeated the same truth: I had no idea what Eleanor was doing. I had always known she was cold, controlling, judgmental, but never this. At night, after Leia was asleep, I'd sit alone in the kitchen and think about Ethan. What would he say if he were here? Would he hate me for letting his mother near our daughter? Would he see my decision as weakness? Or would he understand that I was trying to give Leia a family connection? The guilt gnawed at me until my chest felt hollow. I had tried to bridge a broken family, and instead I had exposed my daughter to something far darker than I ever imagined. Yet beneath the guilt, there was something else: rage. Rage at Eleanor for turning her bitterness into cruelty. Rage at myself for not seeing the signs. Rage at a world where a little girl could vanish into a basement and so few people seemed to notice. The day after Marissa was reunited with her parents, I sat in the driveway, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Laya's words echoed in my head again. Grandma told me I should never tell you what I saw. Eleanor had tried to silence her, to teach her to keep secrets, to bury the truth. But my daughter hadn't listened. She had spoken up, and because she did, another child was free. The weeks that followed felt surreal, as though I were living in someone else's life. Reporters kept circling, neighbors kept whispering, and Eleanor sat in jail awaiting trial. But inside our little home, it was the quiet moments that broke me most, watching Laya color at the kitchen table. Her crayons scattered her songs, half hummed, half forgotten. I couldn't stop thinking, what if she had been the one in that basement? What if instead of whispering to me in the car that morning, she had learned to stay silent? Every time the thought surfaced, I pulled her into my arms, holding her too tightly, breathing her in like she might slip away if I let go. She never complained. Maybe she felt the same fear I did. I met Marissa's parents once briefly when detectives asked me to come to the station for follow-up. They were pale and broken-looking, clinging to each other as though they still couldn't believe their daughter was alive. When they saw me, they hugged me with such desperation that I almost collapsed. "You saved her," Marissa's mother sobbed. "If your little girl hadn't spoken up, we might never have found her." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. It wasn't me. It was Leia. She told me the truth when she was afraid to. They cried harder, then repeating thank you over and over, but their gratitude only deepened my guilt. Because behind every thank you, I heard another voice, Eleanor's, hissing, "This is your fault." Late at night, I'd sit at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence, and I would wonder how Eleanor had become the woman she was. Did her cruelty start as bitterness? Did her loneliness twist into something monstrous? Or had she always been capable of such darkness I didn't know? And I realized painfully I didn't want to. What I did know was, this betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the very people who claim to love you most. Eleanor had looked me in the eye at Ethan's funeral, holding Leia's hand, promising she'd always be there for us. I had believed her because I wanted to, because I thought family meant safety, but family had been the knife in my back. It would have been easy to let that betrayal poison me, to teach Laya that trust is dangerous and silence is safer. But when I looked at her, my brave little girl who refused to keep a terrible secret, I knew I couldn't do that. I couldn't let Eleanor's shadow define us. So I told her one night as I tucked her in, "Sweetheart, if anyone ever tells you not to speak the truth, you remember this. Your voice can save someone. It saved Marissa, and it saved me too." Her eyes widened and she whispered, "Really?" "Really," I said, kissing her forehead. From then on, I decided that our story wouldn't end with fear, it would end with courage. We started therapy together, me and Laya, to untangle the fear and guilt that clung to both of us. Slowly, I saw her laughter return brighter each time. She drew pictures of music and sunshine instead of locked doors and shadows. And in those drawings, I saw our path forward. Eleanor's trial came months later. I didn't go. I didn't need to. Her fate was sealed the moment the police opened that basement door. Instead, I stayed home with Laya baking cookies while the leaves fell outside, filling our house with warmth instead of bitterness. Sometimes betrayal leaves scars too deep to ever forget. But sometimes out of betrayal a new truth emerges, that silence is the ally of cruelty and breaking it is the bravest act of all. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, if you've ever been told to stay quiet when your heart screamed to speak, let this story remind you your voice matters, your truth matters. Even if it shakes the walls, even if it ends relationships, even if it changes everything. Because sometimes your courage is the only thing standing between darkness and light. Thank you for walking with me through this painful story. If it touched your heart, please like this video, share it so others may find strength. Subscribe for more stories of survival and truth, and leave a comment with your own reflections. I promise your voice will be heard here.